What's one trait that you like the most about the other person?
I can tell you, I think about Megha, what I like is her calm and composed nature, right? And she uses her brain more than I do. She's more logical and all that. I'm your typical Punjabi who sort of, uses emotion, and which is a good thing in a startup because emotion actually drives action, right? So you can't be too measured also. But then you can't be reckless. So I think that's where she comes in. So she kind of balances her out. Although she's also Punjabi, but I think she's more of she has more of a Marwari trait that way, which is very useful in any business. So I think it's a good combination. That's what I like about it.
I just reached. It was my first month, and I had subscribed to Financial Times, and I remember him joking with me that who puts Financial Times and all, right? And that's when the whole news of recession broke, and I was like, what is this? Like Lehman, like as a 24-year-old, I was like, what is this Lehman Brothers collapse? I mean, like calling up my father, like I'm back because I'm just in my first trimester, because I don't see, I'm not going to get a job, nothing. And he was like, just hang in there. The pounds crashed, so your fee is going to be like, it's going to come down like 1/4 sort of a thing. So hang in there.
When I was in college only, when mom was doing this, one day I gotten a call from her saying that, I want to register the name for this, what should I call it? And, I remember, I think I was with some friends and all, and you don't want to speak to your mom for too long. So I wanted to finish the phone call fast. And she's like, tell me now, what do you want help with? So she's like, what do I call it? Give me a suggestion. I said, what exactly are we doing here? She's like, we take herbs, plants, flowers, we mix them and we make them. I said, so basically just herbs. She's like, yeah. Like, you have to realize that we live in a place like Chandigarh where it's either in Chandigarh or straight away to Canada. There's no Bombay, Delhi in the middle, right? There's a direct connection with Canada, Australia. And when you are bootstrapped, now you have to choose your battles. You can't just fight everything. There's no scope for error, right? So you can only do one thing properly, which kind of worked for us. The second thing which it really taught us was the importance of having runway, right? So, our importance of cash flow, right? Positive cash flow in the business. I think
which a lot of startups learned the hard way recently.
Yeah, so we learned it in the beginning only. We had a near-death experience even before somebody funded us, so we knew it. That really helped. I just realized that with scale, I think you become like more of a coach rather than the captain, right? So your job is to kind of make sure people have what they need. Salespeople, for example, love to sort of tell them, "Are you a sales guy in your business?" Right? So no offense, but I think salespeople sometimes love to say that, it didn't happen because you didn't give me this or I didn't have that.
In today's episode, we join Arush Chopra and Megha Sabhlok, co-founders of personal care brand Just Herbs. At a revenue run rate of 100 crores, Just Herb is building a line of Ayurvedic results-driven skincare and hair care products. Join us as we talk about D2C brands in India, marketplaces, and about their merger with Marico. So, hi guys, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Mazin. How are you?
Hi.
Good. Doing really good. Looking forward to this. So let's jump into the rapid fire round. First up, if you could be a professional in any other field unrelated to your current work, what would it be and why?
Megha, you'll go first, or should I?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. I think I would like to be an owner of a restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah, a chain of restaurants, because I think I'm passionate about good food and serving good food, and fairly commercially minded. So I think I'll be able to make it profitable. So if not Just Herbs, then I would definitely want to have a restaurant of my own.
Yeah.
Nice.
I can definitely attest to that about the food bit, right? I think from my side, it's a tough one actually, but I think probably I would be a teacher of some sort, because I think education can really bring the largest sort of delta if as far as making a mark in the world is concerned, and among my own innate abilities also, I think I've realized since childhood that I'm fairly decent at communicating ideas and communicating, basically getting ideas across. So I think that is a good teacher whose concepts are very clear in their head also needs to be a good communicator. So I think those two things come naturally to me, and I feel very passionately about it. So perhaps I would have been teaching in some way or the other.
Any subject in particular or in general?
No, in general, I think, yeah,
Cool.
in general,
Nice.
no subject.
And a question for each of you about each other. What's one trait that you like the most about the other person?
I can tell you, I think about Megha, what I like is her calm and composed nature, right? And she uses her brain more than I do. She's more logical and all that. I'm your typical Punjabi who sort of, uses emotion, and which is a good thing in a startup because emotion
Yes,
actually drives action, right? So you can't be too measured
absolutely.
also, but then you can't be reckless. So I think that's where she comes in. So she kind of balances it out. Although she's also Punjabi, but I think she's more of a she has more of a Marwari trait that way, which is very useful in any business. So I think it's a good combination. That's what I like about her.
Nice. And what about you, Megha?
I think Arush's creativity and his problem-solving ability. I really depend on that. So I think the entire team really depends on that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely his creativity.
Cool. The last book that impacted you deeply.
So for me, I think it's something actually I'm reading. It's called Algorithms to Live By. I'm forgetting the name of the authors. It's an interesting book because it talks about computer algorithms, right? And a lot of times people think that studying computer science or whatever is very far removed from philosophy or the way life works. But this book actually makes it very obvious that the two are quite connected. So it has things like, optimal stopping theory, sorting theory, a lot of computer algorithms, which I've never studied those. But now when I'm reading this book, I'm just finding it absolutely fascinating.
Interesting.
Okay.
You, Megha?
Yeah, for me, I have been reading books on Nichiren Buddhism since I practice that. And I feel that they really help me in my, leading a better life, in my conflicts, in your day to day problems, right? Whether it's business related or it's any relationship related.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel that really helps me.
All right. So now transitioning on to the more business-related questions. What's one startup that you admire?
Should I go for that? You want to answer?
You have your answer ready, you can, and I'll get some time.
Go for
Okay,
it.
I'll say Blinkit because I am a regular user. I mean, I just ordered some Vicks lozenges for myself right just before the show because my throat was completely going for a toss. So yeah, I would say Blinkit. It's been a complete game changer. And, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I think I like WhatsApp. If it can still be called a startup, I think what those guys were able to do
Yeah.
with the amount of marketing that went into it, like almost zero, with the team size that they were able to achieve it with,
It's
and
like 20 people, right? Yeah.
the valuation they eventually got, and more than that, forget valuation. I think it was a habit changing product, man. It changed communication forever. You know what I'm saying? And so yeah, huge respect for those guys, man.
Good ones. And Blinkit we'll come back to because I'm sure that's impacted your business as well. And so when
Yeah,
we
yeah.
talk about the future of
Absolutely.
Just Herbs, we'll come back to that. What's your favorite hiring question?
For me, it's, my simple question is to, just tell me your story. That is one very often I ask this question, right? That's how I typically start the conversation.
Okay.
And for me, it would be why us, why would you want to join Just Herbs, right? So that's something which I always like to delve into.
And these are just starting questions, right? I mean,
Yeah.
of course, there's a whole line of questioning after this, but these
Yeah.
are just sort of thought starters,
Yeah.
I think.
No, makes sense. It makes sense. But it shows the kind of different approaches and how you guys think about it. The last one to wrap up this section. What's one truth that few people agree with you on?
Okay, so this is basically which we know, like, I know it's a truth, but a lot of people disagree with me usually.
Exactly. Or you think a lot of people would disagree with you?
No, I think for me, right, I think trust over skills, right, while building your team,
Okay.
right? So for me,
Wow, that's
it's very
unique.
simple, yeah, because you're putting a bunch of people together to do something really, really hard. And I like to borrow from the army, right? Like, without trust, there's nothing, right? I mean, and these are people who can kill for each other and give their lives for each other. So I think I choose trust over skills, trust over anything else. Like a lack of or somebody who's a little less skilled is okay, but if the person is not trustworthy, I think and a lot of people disagree on this because they say you shouldn't trust people
Yeah.
blindly with this and that. And my point is, there's no other way, man. If you want to build something peacefully and build something which is going to scale fast, you need people, and you will be able to work with those people only if you have trust, man. It's the most important thing.
Fair enough. So for me, I mean, this is what I believe, and a few people will agree with it. Maybe my co-founder may not agree, right?
Oh, wow.
Because we often have this debate. So I feel that hard work, I mean, it's very important. Everybody believes that they are working hard and everyone puts in their best, right?
Right.
But along with it, a bit of grit, a bit of farsightedness, and a bit of luck, is important.
And what do I disagree with here?
I mean, like we often have this debate, about the luck part, right?
Yeah.
We say that
So I say
make
like
your
you
own
can make
luck.
your own luck and all that. Make like no, luck is
Fair
luck.
enough.
You can't make it.
You can't make it. You just need to be,
We often have this
Yeah,
debate.
that's true. We have this debate. That's right.
Yeah, there's a trade-off. Being at the right place at the right time, or sometimes it's just luck. You can't always
I have
stop
my
it.
I have my other views on it, but I think we keep having this debate.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Cool. So, would love to hear about both of your backgrounds, where you guys grew up, and how your entire journey leading up to Just Herbs.
Sure.
So, walk us through it.
Like I'm a Chandigarh boy. We're sitting in Chandigarh right now. I grew up here. Up until class 12, I was here. Then I went to college in Mumbai, St. Xavier's College. So I did a liberal arts degree in mass media there. That's where I met Megha, she's actually from Delhi. She'll tell you more about herself. Whilst there, I think the idea was never entrepreneurship, actually. I thought I wanted to change the world, so I wanted to become a journalist, which I did for about a year after college, and then I realized that is probably what the profession looks like from the outside is very different to the inside. These were the days when the internet really hadn't taken up. It was still called new media in those days. So, in spite of having worked for a year in the media industry, I thought still not soon enough to give up on it. So I continued, and I studied a bit more in that same field, and I then got a scholarship to go to Europe. So I lived in 3 different European countries over a span of 2 years. Denmark. I lived in a city called Aarhus in Denmark. Then I lived in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and then my master's was finished at City University in London. And Megha Stories also runs parallel because after college we started dating, so a lot of those moments were lived together. But then when I graduated, it was the year 2008 when Lehman Brothers had collapsed. So I had high hopes that I'll get to work in the city of London, and the whole romance about working in that area. I really wanted to do that. But plans don't go as per how you think they would. So all the graduate programs I thought I'd apply for, they've actually been scrapped that year. So there was no jobs, and
Was it finance related jobs that you
Yes.
yeah, so that's why. Okay.
So Bloomberg was to give me that position in London, but they said we've scrapped it. So we have something in Mumbai, and we want to send you there. And I had told myself that I'd probably not come back to Mumbai now because I'm enough of this city. But little did I know that in about a couple of years I'll be coming back. So I came back, started working with Bloomberg for a while. That also was something that wasn't really up to my liking. It wasn't really what I wanted. So I thought I'll just take a break. And during that time, an opportunity presented itself in Singapore. I was doing remote work for a company from Chandigarh, and they said after the crisis, we are rebuilding our team, and why don't you come here? And it was sheer, I would say, I don't know what the word is, not luck, but it was more like
serendipity, we call it.
Serendipity, perhaps. That I ended up getting a job, which I'm told you have to have a very fancy MBA for, and at least you would have studied some finance and all. I think the firm that I worked with, it was a very special place because the principal of that firm himself was an English literature graduate, and then he had become, a celebrated stockbroker himself, and he was leading EMEA at Deutsche Bank, and the entire fund that I used to work with, there was a bunch of 20 people who had walked out of Deutsche Bank and started it. So it was a startup in itself, and I was probably the only Indian in that team. Yeah, I was the only Indian in that team. And in my interview, I think Ed, who I consider left a deep impact on me, he asked me a question which I still can never forget. He said, "Tell me something which is not on your CV, which is really interesting about you." And I was completely unprepared, right? So a bit like your rapid fire. So I told him, I said, "Look, I would have been and become an actor, if there was a little bit more money in it, because I've performed at the NCPA and the Prithvi Theatre in Bombay, and when somebody would pay 500 rupees to come watch me perform on stage in a play, it was a good feeling, right? It was very very fulfilling." So he said, "Okay, cool, we'll hire you then, because that means you're not afraid to pick up the phone and speak," right? And that was it.
That was it.
Yeah, and when I was leaving,
That's great.
I didn't know what had happened. Like I was still trying to process this, and when I was leaving, and I remember Megha was waiting for me somewhere outside at a cafe.
We were married then.
We were already married then, and in school. So he's like, "Do you know how to do financial modeling and things like that?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "You better learn it fast and you don't tell anyone." And that was it. So I got that job, and then I had to kind of do my CFA level 1, learn the basics of finance and how to engage with clients, etc. And learned on the job, learned a lot basically. And so that's my journey. I'll let Megha tell hers, and then we'll tell you how then Just Help started. Yeah.
So I'm from Delhi. Did my schooling in Delhi. Then moved to Bombay for my college. I did my undergrad from Sapphire College. I did my bachelor's in mass media. And worked for a year in Bombay. I had a small stint with the Bollywood and PR. That was where I started out with my PR career. Started out in Bollywood, basically. And then again, typical parents saying, "Oh God, why do you need to be in Bombay? So many jobs are there in Gurgaon. Come back." And moved back to Gurgaon. Had a year of corporate PR, and I was like, enough of this city. I'm talking about like some 15 years ago. Enough of Gurgaon. I'm done with it. I moved to England. I went for my master's to Lancaster. That's when Arush was doing his master's in London, and I was in Lancaster. And I had just reached. It was my first month, and I had subscribed to Financial Times, and I remember him joking with me that who puts Financial Times and all, right? And that's when the whole news of recession broke, and I was like, "What is this?" Like Lehman, as a 24-year-old, I was like, "What is this Lehman Brothers collapse?" I mean, calling up my father, I come back because I'm just in my first trimester, because I don't see, I'm not going to get a job, nothing. And he was like, "Just hang in there. The pound's crashed, so your fee's going to be it's going to come down like 1/4 sort of a thing. So hang in there." I was like, "Fine, I finished my master's. He was already packed off to Bombay, right?
Okay, so you'd already gone back while you were doing your master's. Wow.
Yeah, I was still there. I had got a job in some remote area in Bolton, and I was toying with the idea that should I do it or not. And then I was like, "Chuck it, I'm just going to go back to my comfort zone."
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I still.
Where are you from? You said.
I'm from Mumbai originally. My family.
Just like Bolton was I don't know, some small town in Maharashtra.
To
give you tiny little town. Yes.
Right? So I mean, I was like, should I do this job or go back? And then I was like, "Chuck it, I'm going back to my comfort zone, which is Gurgaon, and I'll get a job very easily, And that's what happened. I came back and I picked up a job with a facilities management firm, which was headquartered again they had their offices in UK, and I thought that, okay, maybe at some point they may just parcel me back there.
Okay, the plan was still to go back to London. Nice.
Yeah. But it so happened that within a year and a half, Arush was in Singapore, and I got married, and I moved to Singapore. Yeah, life is you really don't know, how life unfolds, right? And then I got a job in Singapore. I was working with this group which is Bangalore based, right? They're headquartered in Bangalore, but they had opened a sales and marketing office back in Singapore. So I was heading their, sales and marketing division for the Southeast Asia region. So they were into manufacturing of basically ingredients which go into your FMCG goods, right? So your triclosan, like things which go into your toothpaste or paints. So I was marketing these products across Southeast Asia. So I mainly had a traveling job back then. Yeah. So that was it. And then in 2013, we moved back and we started Just Herbs. So yeah, I'm just looking now.
Yeah, I think
Walk us through that, because I mean, both of you guys were in Singapore. Both of you guys had great jobs, living the dream,
Yeah.
so to say. So why quit, and how did you convince yourself it was the right thing to do?
so. The firm, the investment firm that I used to work at, there was a very strong entrepreneurial undercurrent there. People were encouraged, even if you had, I knew few people who had their family business that they were running, or some side hustle. So that was cool. And the other thing was that whilst there, so we used to invest in farming assets. So the whole idea, the whole thesis of that of the fund was that there's going to be more people than there is food on the planet, right? So productive means of food will go up in value. So there's the land aspect of it, and then there's the yield aspect of it. And because we're investing across the globe, it's also diversified well, right? So each time I would read investment memos on wherever we've invested. I was noticing that there's a common theme of conscious consumption, which is not limited to one geography, but it's common across the world. The second thing was that a small pool of money we also had invested into emerging markets in Southeast Asia, places like Vietnam, Indonesia, those island nations there. And the reasoning we used to give clients to be investing there was, high demographic dividend, young population, high disposable income. I'm like, wait a minute, that's very true of India as well, right? And if you take even two of these island nations, you put them together, there's probably more people in Uttar Pradesh than, these two countries. So, as far as consumption is concerned, the sheer size of this opportunity is humongous, right? So, but still, we were still on the fence about it for almost a year. Yeah, and because it wasn't an easy decision actually, and then we met a family friend, I think from Megha's side, who spent a lot of time in one of the FMCG companies, and now he was semi-retired in Singapore, and we met him. He lived there. And he said, you kids should not be living here at your age. You should be in an emerging economy. I don't care where you go. You go anywhere, which is an emerging economy. Don't be here. This place has plateaued if you want to grow and all. So that was validation enough. They're like, cool, then we are thinking right. So we decided we'll pack our bags and now we're going back. But the question was, go back and do what, right? So the thing was that, my mother, she's a biochemist. So back in the day, in the 80s, she got 6 gold medals whilst at university. But, she couldn't do anything with her passion, which is basically science. And, she likes studying and all that. She didn't do any of that for the longest time, up until my sister and I had grown up. And then she studied Ayurveda and she married that with, her scientific temperament. And typically, people see Ayurveda and science as two different disciplines, two conflicting disciplines. They keep sort of squabbling with each other. But a person like her would rather see the differences, the similarities over the differences, right? So, yeah. So she was creating these a few basic products, like 3-4 basic products were being made. Like my dad back in the day had invested in a small industrial plot in Mohali. And there was like a single room there with a tin shed where she used to work out of. And it was really not a business. It was probably a little bit more than a hobby, right? And that's what it was. So we thought, and her formulations in their very raw form, sometime when Megha and I were dating in college, I'd given her to use.
Yeah. He had probably shared some of them with me because, when you are about like 20, 21, you break into those acnes, right? Especially with the weather like in Bombay,
Yeah.
So once or twice I told him, and he very casually mentioned that, my mom does this. So I said, why don't you, carry some for me next time. And of course, it worked very well. And I shared it with my other flatmates who I used to share my flat with. And they would all be gaga, and he would go home and would ask him for those, face washes or, they were basically powder-based products then. They were not so evolved, right? There were just a few products.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and this was while you guys were in the UK still, or
this
before
was
you
in
had made the move?
You
moved back and okay,
then,
so
right?
this was happening in the background.
Like in the background, well before. Got it.
During when I was in college, only when mom was doing this, one day I'd gotten a call from her saying that I want to register a name for this. What should I call it? And I remember I think I was with some friends and all, and you don't want to speak to your mom for too long, so I wanted to finish the phone call fast. And she's like, "Tell me now, what do you want help with?" So she's like, what do I call it? Give me a suggestion. I said, what exactly are we doing here? She's like, we take herbs, plants, flowers, we mix them and we make them. I said, so basically just herbs. She's like, yeah.
That was the name.
Like, yeah, cool. Let's call it that. And that's how it was. There is no other story around it. It was a snap decision. It happened. It clicked. My dad liked it. Like a few other people, they told it to, they liked it. And the name was registered. So when we came back in 2014, we had a registered name. We had a license under which we could manufacture, and we had some very basic formulations. There was no packaging. The formulations weren't finished enough. They were not in a form that could, appeal to a large consumer base. There was a lot of missing pieces in the formulations, in the supply chain. It was almost as if, like a very basic thing is there, but a lot needs to be built, right? So it was a big challenge for us. First, getting used to the way things work in India after having lived overseas for a while. That only took some time. Then also, family, right? I mean, people won't say it, but in their heads, everybody was thinking that, who does this, right?
As you said, that who leaves their cushy jobs and come back
in Singapore and come to sell Ayurvedic products.
So
yes,
we didn't have many motivating people around us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think.
But
I'm sure they meant well, but it wasn't really helping us, right?
Yeah.
So
and
you have to realize that we live in a place like Chandigarh where it's either in Chandigarh or straight away to Canada. There's no Bombay, Delhi in the middle. Right? Direct connection with Canada, Australia. Every nook and cranny has an immigration center, right? So the general expectation is that, right now, people would tell us, look, Australian PR is still quite possible.
Yeah.
You can still try.
Before you get too old.
Before you get too old, it's still possible. I'm like, you know what? We're trying to do something here, and
and you're not being encouraged. I mean, okay, don't encourage, but don't discourage, sort of a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Young, right?
Let's be fair. I think they were not discouraging. I think they meant well, but they didn't know better.
Yeah, like I remember somebody said there was Shehnaz Hussain was a big name at some point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she was big in the cosmetics industry. So I remember saying कि Shehnaz सिर्फ एक ही बारी बनी थी. So I was like, okay.
And now when it's funny, right? Even today, to somebody who starts in personal care, people are like, it's a very cluttered space.
Yeah, it is.
Trust me, 10 years ago also, people were saying the same thing.
It was very cluttered.
It was cluttered then also.
I mean,
So whoever is listening to this should find comfort in the fact that, we also were told the same thing even 10 years ago. So there's nothing new, right? When you hear this word, what is the moat, this and that, same, all the same jazz, basically, right?
But yes, 10 years ago, I'd like to just add that the market had evolved and people were looking for new stuff. That was another thing, right? Like, I mean, today, when we say a paraben-free or a sulfate-free is a given, but 10 years ago, it was something novel for the customers.
So
right?
That is
something new.
That is
right?
true.
On reading the complete, we were one of the few brands who actually looked at like a complete ingredient disclosure, right?
Yeah.
On your label. It was not there, right? So there was a lot of newness to the brand, which probably then, those dated brands didn't have it. So that's how...
Yeah. And that's true. And also, while that was a novelty, then it became just basic hygiene.
Over the years. Yes,
and then we had to reinvent ourselves
again and again.
So I think the larger point I was trying to make is that today also, if you're starting, you just have to find those gaps. They do exist somewhere.
They will always exist.
It's just about finding them.
Yeah.
And then the competition will become irrelevant, you know. So that's basically what I believe. I don't know forgot what the question was, but yeah.
No, I mean, that was it. That was your transition and really good advice for our listeners. And just building on that, you guys started a Facebook community. Was what helped you kind of figure out that, hey, this is what the market needs and this is the gap that I can go after? Can you walk us through your process? How did you zero in on it? I mean, you had a baseline.
So it's been a while. I'll try to do this and please help.
Yeah, sure.
Interject.
I'll keep chipping in.
Yeah. So essentially, we've had a 10-year journey, and out of that 10-year journey, I think 5.5 years, we were a bootstrapped company, right? Customers were funding the journey. Customers were funding the business. We were putting food on the table through this business. There was no seed capital. There was no debt, nothing. I was profitable through and through. So I was running Facebook ads myself. I was doing digital marketing myself. It was my credit card. Megha would be like, who dips into their savings and burns that money on ads and all.
We had a common, like a card, I would be like, whenever I
have to give it to her. That's why I say he's the voice of reason, in the. So she had to put up with a lot of nonsense, right? So while doing that, because we were doing that with our own money, it would really hurt me to see that, look, 100 people come to the website on only 2% shop, right? 2% conversion rate. And to my untrained mind, now we are told that that's pretty standard in e-commerce, 2-3%. But I think this can't be good, man. Like, that's a horrible conversion rate. What do we do to improve it? So the first principle thinking was that we are essentially telling people to come to our shop, to come to our D2C website. What if we go to them where they are hanging out? Okay. Right. So now what are those places that they're hanging out? They're hanging out on Facebook. They're hanging out on WhatsApp. Let's go there. So WhatsApp, this is the time I'm talking about when WhatsApp hadn't released its API. In fact, many years down the line, that's when they released it. So the hack which I used then was that I used my own number and I put it in Facebook ads and I said, we'll give you a consultation and we'll match the right products to your skin type, etc. The consultative selling, we were doing it without knowing we were doing it. Okay. So, in fact, today also have 2 WhatsApp numbers for this reason, because that one number got banned sometime because, WhatsApp wanted to monetize its API, so they weren't letting people do this, right? So, anyway, so that's how it started. So we became one-on-one with consumers. Like at 3 a.m., I would get messages like, I've just delivered a baby and I have pigmentation on my face and what do I do?
So initially we both had, so your one number got banned. Initially we both had numbers and we would both do the, consultations. And
Right. So that really helped us because being one-on-one with the consumer, what is the vocabulary your customer uses, where does she live, who is she, it becomes very real for you. So does she use the word fairness or does she use the word glow? Does she call it a body wash or a shower gel? You know what I'm saying? So, and all that would then inform your SEO efforts. It would just give you a very good sense of, how to get your product market fit, right? And
No, that's a really good example. Like just talking to your customers gives you so much information. Linking that back to SEO, I wouldn't have thought about that. That's incredible, right?
It happens in our trade all the time, right? So
whether it's skin lightening or brightening, we developed our products around that, getting insights from them.
Yeah, like we call it a lip and cheek tint, but the search volume on Amazon calls it a blusher, right? You wouldn't know this until you actually speak to
talk to people.
And if a guy who's doing this, who has no clue about makeup, will never know. So that's what I tell all the guys who feel very this thing and they join us. I don't know anything about makeup. I'm like, bro, you have to get a crash course. You have to know your foundation from your lipstick to from your culture. You need to know all that.
Yeah, like in our team, in our NPD, we have like guys and girls. Who help us with makeup, right? So
anyway, once we did that WhatsApp thingy and it started working well, we thought let's take this to the next level. And Facebook groups were a big thing then. So what we did was we set up an email automation where every time somebody buys a product, the third time, because I think I read somewhere backed by data that if a customer shops with you 3 times, that's when he's most likely to become a repeat customer, not even twice, but thrice. So somebody's shopped, I can't remember whether the trigger was 2 times or 3 times, but they would get a very nice email saying, welcome to Just Herbs Insider, which is an exclusive community for you. The benefits are that you get access to the founding team. You can, ask for feedback to other fellow users, power users of the brand. You get to know about product launches. You get to, all of that stuff, right? So just like that, we had about 5,000 women sitting in a Facebook community, helping each other with their skin concerns. And suggesting products from the brand. Even the group was moderated very strongly, but sometimes even before we could answer something, somebody else would have come and helped somebody else. So we saw something interesting was happening there. But then I think a few consumers posted that, why don't you launch, this product, that product. Somebody said, I'm a working woman and I like to wear makeup. I have to wear makeup for my work. But when I go to office and it's hot where I live, so my foundation starts caking up on my face, like those creases appear on my skin. Can you make something which is very lightweight? And of course, it's just herbs, so it'll be clean. So I would love to get that from you. Somebody else would say, look, I'm using your face wash. I love it. I'm using your face mask. Can you also make kajal? Okay. Now, that really threw us off for a minute. We're like, okay, we always thought ourselves as a skincare and a hair care company, right? And not just us. The whole trade is organized like that. Like, if you go to
pick a bucket.
If you go to a Nykaa today, there is a separate category manager for makeup, separate for skincare. The margins are different in every category. You go to the retail. You go to general trade, the retailer will ask for a different margin for makeup. It's not thought. But the point is the consumer doesn't think like that. The consumer is saying, I'm using everything from you. I expect the same quality, the same cleanliness in the product, in makeup. So why don't you make it? And I'm like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. We should be doing it. Although we never thought ourselves as a makeup company, but now it's a challenge for us. So we went back to mom and we told her that we need to do this. And my mother is like always up for a challenge. So she kind of got into it a bit too deep. She goes into whenever given something. So she created a formula and what we did was we packed it into 4 or 5 small jars, right? We put those jars into envelopes. We labeled them A, B, C, and D. We sent out a Google form for people to sign up and give us some basic information. Some 500-600 people signed up in that group. And then we shipped these out free of cost, right? And we told them that you take part in this process, to make this product with us. Let's do it collaboratively. And,
that's incredible. Just 4 versions and get feedback.
Yeah, and that just blew up, Mazin. I think in that this was a time, when it wasn't normal for people to be sort of changing clothes on Instagram like it is today, right? There was everybody was not an influencer back then.
This was back 2016, 17.
Yeah,
right?
so if somebody is posting about a parcel they received and all, and which is purely organic feedback,
it was not.
We got tons of it, right? And because people were elated that finally there's a beauty company out of Chandigarh who's actually, working out of Chandigarh and thinking about it in a new way, that they're developing products with consumers.
And for a change, it's not the other way around. That,
you're not pushing it at them.
Knows a product. Usually, like suddenly there is a Moroccan oil, like argan oil, right? I mean, we have so many oils in India. We have coconut oil. We have so many. We don't need another one from an outside. So instead of throwing a product, let's ask them what they want and then let's create.
So it was an experiment. It worked. Just to put it into perspective, we've launched about 5 to 6 products through crowdsourcing so far, and I think the hit rate is very, very high. I think apart from one, everything is a bestseller. So this was the first one we crowdsourced, and we said, let's make this a model, right, of product development. Then the next one we did was a makeup remover, and
again came from people asking for it. And that was
so we thought. So we started 2017-18. We started thinking in this direction of makeup. So we said the one entry point is also a remover, because it's like brushing your teeth every night for a makeup user, right? You have to remove it. So that's the best way to get entry into the vanity. And we made a makeup remover, which is a micellar water, which is a French formulation, but we made that with an Ayurvedic twist, where the water was tulsi and triphala water with vegetable oil suspended in it. And worked really well. Beautiful product.
So most of the makeup removers have alcohol, right? So we had customers saying that the alcohol tends to dry your skin out. So they wanted a makeup remover which is natural and
works like a toner.
Which works like a toner and doesn't dry your skin out. Sort of.
Oh, interesting. So that was the problem you guys were solving, and so okay.
Yeah. So, and I know it sounds like a very small problem, but it is a problem.
No, but it's hard for me to relate to it, so I probably can't. I'm not removing makeup.
In beauty, right? Not getting the right shade of lipstick is a big enough problem. Right?
Yes, exactly.
You can make some revenue through that too, right? So, so this is something we did, and this time around, I think there was a journalist. I still sort of am in touch with her. She was part of this process, and she ended up writing a very nice piece in the Mint about it. That there's this company in Chandigarh which is doing things differently, and this I experienced that whole process and all, and that really put us in a different orbit. So suddenly, we were not just another beauty company, but a company which is sort of democratizing beauty and whatnot, and we also pushed the pedal on it. We said, why not, man? If there is something that we are doing, let's talk a little bit more about it. And by this time, from being bootstrapped around 17, 18, we started getting a lot of inbound interest from investors that they want to look at us and all that. We had a lot of conversations, but it was only until in 2018 when we raised our first round of financing. Because we knew that we cannot have product market fit now, and now for scale, we will need some capital. And that's the only round of capital that we've raised in our lives. It was a very, very small amount, and everybody who invested got a 80% IRR when Marico bought everybody out. So that's been our long but short journey. Yeah.
No, amazing. Would love to dive into it a little bit more, into a few of the kind of big inflection points.
Yeah.
When you guys fundraise, walk us through the thought process, and how did that change? How did you kind of shift from a bootstrapped to a VC-backed company? Did your company, walk us through that?
I think the need for external capital arose because we could see that now, we were already at 5-7 crores a year at that point, completely bootstrapped, profitable. And then GST came in, which kind of disturbed a lot of cash flow in the business because, from what I remember, the first time GST was introduced, it was 28% in our category. And then suddenly it was brought down to 18%, all that confusion. And it was 2% we were paying before that.
2% to 28 and then back to wow.
Okay. What you must have done.
It's crazy.
So we would have like a 14 or a 2%. Somebody would give you a
C
form, you would be 2%. And then from a 2% to 28. So I remember that one quarter where we actually paid 28%. We struggled being a bootstrap company. And I remember Arush and I talking that how are we going to sustain, right? Because till now everything was good. Because with GST, the outflow is first, and meanwhile you're still realizing money from your customers, right? So till now, when the customers were funding the business, suddenly there was like this model had just been shaken, And of course, with Facebook and all getting a bit expensive, right?
Yeah, so all those factors
were also going up. And that's when we were like, okay, we do need external capital.
So we were surviving on repeat rates, which continue to be very, very healthy even today. And we were D2C, right? So, I'm told this is also not normal that, most brands first build marketplaces, then they do their own website. Ours was the opposite.
But with that, we got a lot of loyalty, right?
We got a lot of loyalty, actually, which has a rub-off even today when we have gone into offline. When a customer comes into a shop and says, "Acha, Just Herbs aa gaya, I was waiting for it." The shopkeeper feels very confident. Or, and that is all because of that, all those hard yards we did while
so
building.
We were doing D2C, and with our own bootstrap, we were starting our own stores.
Yeah.
So before we got our first angel round, we already had about 3 stores. One was in Chandigarh, 2 were in Hyderabad. One was probably 2 in Hyderabad, 1 in Chandigarh. Yeah, we had 3 stores, right? From our own bootstrap.
One of them was a franchise.
Self-funded. Yeah, one was a franchise even, right? And
so it was... No, that's incredible. But I'm just curious, was that was obviously a conscious decision, right? Like you guys decided not to sell on Amazon and the likes and wanted to go direct to consumers. Why was that?
Both a conscious decision, and also that we didn't want to do too many things in one go. I think it was more like, let's do one thing properly. And when you are bootstrapped, now you have to choose your battles. You can't just fight everything. There's no scope for error, right? So you can only do one thing properly, which kind of worked for us. The second thing which it really taught us was the importance of having runway, right? So, our importance of cash flow, right? Positive cash flow in the business. I think,
which a lot of startups learned the hard way recently. So
we learned it in the beginning only. We had a near-death experience even before somebody funded us, so we knew it. That really helped.
So we were heavy on exports too, so that was also very helpful.
We were doing whatever we could to kind of, keep the business.
To sustain us and to keep the business, and for our homes to run, we did all of that. But there came a point where we knew that, if we have to sustain, we need external funding.
That is one thing. And secondly, also the business has PMF. It can absorb that capital and get growth. So both
and growth.
Yeah. For the growth, we knew that if we get this sort of capital, we can grow.
It was just the scaling phase.
And we were able to, and that's how we got the next and the next round sort of a thing.
Yeah.
So first we had an angel round, then an institution came in, and then Marico came in eventually.
Yeah, but both the rounds I think were just 1 or 2 months apart.
2 months apart,
Okay, and then
so just a few months apart.
Yeah,
and then COVID happened. So 2000. So we were like, I don't know. I mean, we had to literally thank God because our round got closed in 2019 October, and then 2020 March COVID happened, right? So of course, the B2C and the marketplaces, of course, the digital thing grew because people were shopping online, right?
But since we were not heavily indexed on marketplaces, we weren't really the beneficiaries of the COVID wave or anything, right? Unlike a lot of other places, we were not, right? So marketplaces for us has only been about 3 years old, so and we've seriously scaled up on them with God's grace, one after the other. There also, I think we've not said we'll scale everywhere. Let's do Amazon, let's do Nykaa, let's Blinkit has come in, scaling well, okay. Flipkart's still not working, let's crack Flipkart now. So concerted effort on each marketplace and then building it brick by brick, basically. That's how.
No, that's interesting. So it's still really focused, but now you have more resources, so you can kind of gradually add blocks. Yeah. And what about, when you fundraise and you go through multiple fundraising rounds like that and you're scaling, the team obviously grows and you can't run the company the same way that you do it. I'm sure you can't talk to every customer anymore. So how did you scale? How did you transition from doing stuff yourself to empowering people around you?
No, I think you're right. I think in the beginning now, I used to be like, oh, I've not done anything today, man. Like I haven't done like real work today because I haven't really broken my head over something. And then I'm like, no, but I've done a lot of other important stuff. I've sat with my people, solved their problems and all that. And I just realized that with scale, I think you become like more of a coach rather than the captain, right? So your job is to kind of make sure people have what they need, Salespeople, for example, love to sort of tell them, are you a sales guy in your business? Right? So no offense, but I think salespeople sometimes love to say that, it didn't happen because you didn't give me this or I didn't have that. We didn't have this product. We didn't have the inventory. This guy, the typical ones, right? So our job then becomes to say, boss, tell me what you want, right? Here it is. Now I need to hold you accountable for this, right? And so that's just one of the examples, right? So I think it becomes I think the best example I can think of is that of a coach. That is the biggest change. The second thing is that in your early years, you hire all-rounders, right? Because that's what you can afford or whatever. And people also don't believe in you as much as they do when you kind of have some scale. But in your more advanced sort of stages where you have certain scale, you need specialists, right? So it's from a cricketing analogy. I think you would need the best spinner. You would need the best all-rounder. You need the best opening batsman and nothing else. So very specific.
As you scale, it's not all-rounders, it's
you need specific skill sets. Very specific knowledge is required. So how to attract that talent, how to make sure that the talent is feeling valued.
And how to keep them.
Because these people, even sometimes if you give them the right, financial motivation also, after that also, if they're not having fun, they don't stay long enough. So you want to make sure that the overall atmosphere is that of very high performance, So
typically once you have funding in place, and basically it's about getting all the pieces together and getting, moving ahead, right? Yeah. Because when you're bootstrapped, you're looking at every piece individually and you are moving that one piece, right? Yeah. But once you have funding, you have to ensure that they all move together. That's it. That's one major thing, like being the CEO and the CEO, we felt that, okay, because again, 5 years being bootstrapped, we were used to again going,
so Megha and I talk about this. I think it feels surreal that from like actually cutting bills in a bill book to like taking products and delivering them ourselves to our customers to now having
to standing on exhibitions or
to now having a business head and hiring MBAs and running the company and all. It's like it just feels unreal.
Like I feel because it's not like when we started out. I mean, a lot of people say कि हमें तो VC money लेना है और हमने तो 100 crore करना है. That was not the vision. I mean, when we started,
we didn't have a vision like
it
that.
was like, oh, we want to make a brand with a difference. We want to make something sexy. We want to make something cool. But it wasn't like मुझे 50
But for me,
crore
though,
करना है,
it was. I was thinking about it. That what was it actually? I think for me, it was a little bit about validation also in some ways.
Yeah.
Because I had left that and come here, I wanted to. It was like do or die.
Yeah, we wanted to make a difference, but it wasn't necessarily only monetary. You get
Yeah,
like,
no.
It wasn't कि मेरे को 50 crore sale करना है, अब 100 करना है, अब 200. ऐसा नहीं था. We wanted to make a good product, a good brand which stands out, and then see things will fall in place, right?
Yeah.
Then the VCs approached us, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like मुझे VC के पीछे भागना है, क्योंकि तब इतना ecosystem it was not there, right? The ecosystem was also not there. The funding was not there. The way it started happening in 2018-19, right? So. Yeah.
The word D2C didn't exist.
Right? There was no ecosystem. I still remember when our first cash on delivery order, like I told my, my logistics partner that you have to do cash on delivery. I don't care, you have to. So he was like, okay, ma'am, for you, we'll do a cash on delivery order. I said, this cash on delivery order has come. It's a big one of 10K. It was like huge.
A 10,000 order.
10,000 order.
We would do consultative selling, so AOVs were really massive.
Yeah. You have to do it for me. So he said, okay, fine. When it came for the payment, he was like, I'm sorry, madam, that guy has ran away with the money. I said, why? What happened? He said, that 10,000 was as much as his salary. So after receiving your payment, he didn't come back only. Yeah, the ecosystem didn't exist, right? You didn't have your UPIs, you didn't have your logistic partners, you didn't have, there was no digitization. I mean, the way there is...
Man, to get a payment gateway on your website, you had to wait months on end. There was only CC Avenue, I don't know if you remember those days. And then PayU Money came in, and I still have an email I wrote to them. I said, can you make your interface mobile friendly? Those are the times I'm talking about, right?
So in the last, I have to say 5 years, this thing has changed. And COVID accelerated this online shopping and, D2C, I would say. And people have started taking to homegrown brands,
Yeah.
It's not like only international is sexy. Today, your homegrown brands are also sexy and people want to explore and buy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And talking about the impact of COVID and changes in the ecosystem, quick commerce and Blinkit, as you guys mentioned, has obviously been huge. How big of a role is that for you guys? Can you share how much of your business is coming from these kind of players versus traditional channels?
The whole scheme of things, it's still small. But I think if you just talk about marketplaces, it's probably very close to now. What let's say a Nykaa does, or in a few months, very close to what in some months even more, and some months equal to Amazon during the festive time and all that. So it scaled up very quickly. And when we were onboarding, we thought, we're just doing it. It's not going to work.
Just for the sake of it.
People just order chips and Maggi and all that. And
that's right. Yeah.
And how wrong we were, because now the products that sell, it makes complete sense. So nail paint, lipstick, kajal, quick touch up which a woman needs.
Yeah.
And we are now told that we sell in unit terms, we sell more lipsticks than even a Maybelline and some of the big brands. We're the largest lipstick sellers on Blinkit now. So who would have thought?
That's crazy. And so, you guys have built this company over the years. It's now scaled and you've gone through all these evolutions. How do you guys deal with conflicts? And it's always harder when, you can't just walk away, leave the office and not talk to each other.
Yeah. So now, we've been working for almost 10 years together, right? In the earlier years, it was harder, right? Over a period of time, we've set more boundaries. But in spite of that, we have conflicts, right? And I feel one person has to step away, right? Either of us, right? Either we, and then in hindsight, we realize that one of us was wrong, right? But for that point, one of us has to step away. Because if we know that there is no point both of us going loggerheads, it's going to be an explosion, right? And we've learned from our, some past, we could call them learnings or mistakes or whatever, but we've been working for the past 10 years. And I think what kept us also going is that one person stepped away. I don't know. This is what I feel.
Yeah, I think it's also very important to let the team know that although we are married to each other, but we are still two different co-founders, right? We are two different individuals, two different co-founders with different temperaments and ways of doing things. That is one. And the other is like what Megha said, you really need to know how to step back, because mostly these conflicts are not about anything personal. They're about the business. And if it's about the business, then the right decision should prevail. So if you've, after giving it a thought, you've realized that perhaps my point of view is not the best for the business, then automatically it becomes very easy to step away. Because you don't want anything wrong to happen.
Yeah, because here we're not here to satisfy each other's egos,
Yeah, it's not
right?
about that
It's
at
not
all.
that. I mean, so we know that it is for the betterment of the business, and if
Yeah.
this one's point of view is better, then the other person should back off. That, I mean, and now we have a fairly larger team, to which way the wind is blowing. That okay, my point of view is better than the other. So we
That's a good point.
don't reach that point.
Listen to other people's.
So what do you think? The team votes for it, and then it.
No, like usually it's a unanimous thing. Whenever we are in a conflict, we sometimes call them. We don't want it to blow out of proportion, so we call them for help.
Like, hey, Mazin, what do you think? Hey,
what do you
XYZ,
think?
what do you think? ABC, what do you think? If it's 3-1, then you're like, vote it
Yeah,
out.
then we don't. We just know it. And then it's just we try to end it. We don't try to bring that home.
Yeah, not at all.
No, makes sense.
We just try to end it. Yeah.
Makes sense. I mean, we've seen quite a few, founders like you guys who are, it's not just a work relationship. And I think it can make it work. It's about setting boundaries, which is crucial. But just to wrap this up, Mariko and the acquisition, can you tell us a bit about how that changed for you guys? How has it been going? And
No,
where
in
are
terms
you going
of,
next?
sure. So in terms of running the business, nothing has changed. I think the ambitions we had to scale the business, with God's grace, we've been able to meet those ambitions. What was interesting about this partnership was that from a time where very few people would believe in us to a time where we had around 5 term sheets, Marico was one of them, right? And we chose them over the others. Simple reason was that we interacted with the management. I think Shogata and the team, the vibe was very nice. Value system was very, very good. More than and we are a big one for that, right? So I'm a big one for those soft things, right? Trustworthiness, etc. I told you I only should do business with good people. I think that I'm a big believer in that. Good outcomes come out of it, and very hard to find good people, right? So when you find them, then you don't look at a few points here and there in the valuation, etc. Right? So the relationship was more important, and the other thing was that they had done Beardo before us, so there was a case study, and they've done other brands after us as well. So they're here for the long term. They're investing off their balance sheet. It's not borrowed capital either from LPs or from other investors. Yeah, that was a big comfort as well. It's a very healthy free cash flow business. Those were the things. Yeah, so which helped make that decision. And in the larger scheme of things, working with a strategic is also interesting because you know that your brand will live beyond you as well, right? So that is always very comforting. So once a founder, always a founder. Yeah. So even if there was no Marico up till this stage, we wouldn't be doing the daily decision making. We would have definitely brought in a business head. So controlling the company, etc., was never the main thing. The idea was that to make it into a big, meaningful business. So so those were the few things we thought about.
Yeah, and Just Hubs has been our first baby, and we always felt that we wanted to hand it eventually in very safe hands.
Yeah.
So we thought that way Marico was a good fit.
So, I mean, whatever happens from here on, I mean, we don't know. Of course, nobody will know. But I think we've ensured our best to kind of park it in very safe hands, the business as well as our team, right?
That team is extremely important. Yeah.
For them also, it's a great home to be in, so that.
Looking forward next year, what are some of the plans, some of the big themes that you guys are focusing on?
No, I think we've kind of been category creators in sort of natural makeup space. I think before us, a couple of brands had done it. And I think there's a lot of depth in this space, along with our, the soul of the brand, which is the skin and the hair care, which is my mother's formulations mainly. So I think that skincare has a good rub off on the makeup category. And it's a unique proposition where we are talking about makeup with clean credentials, which give you the same sort of, this brand promise of, cleanliness and naturalness, which you have in skincare. It's a unique proposition in makeup, and I think there's plenty of room to grow there. In terms of channels also, I think modern trade is something we're slightly under-indexed on. We focus on these on other sub-channels in offline. So I think that would be one channel to explore. Plus, a lot of the plans will be aligned with what Marico has thought about the brand as well. So I guess that'll have to be a partnership.
And I would like an answer from both of you guys. This is one question we ask all our guests. What is some unfiltered feedback that you received that really impacted you either personally or professionally?
So this was before we started Just Herbs, and we were both toying with the idea. We were both in Singapore in our cushy jobs, right? And I was not very comfortable, giving up my job and just coming back and starting this, because you would mean like no salaries, nothing, right? So I remember my father was visiting us and we were having a chat, and I was telling him that how confused I am and how even if I go back, I'll pick up a job and then I'll do this on the side. Like I was really confused because, when you have an income coming in, you just suddenly leave it. It was a little hard, right? And he told me that, look, you can't sail on two boats, right? Either you jump into it completely and then you see whatever happens. It'll fail, right? You guys are both educated, smart. You'll give it 1 year, 2 years, and I'm sure even if he says firstly, why will it fail? But even if it fails, right? You guys will go back to jobs, but at least you guys give it your best shot, right? And that's what, when he told me that, and I was like, okay, he was at least in his 60s then, and I said, wisdom coming from such an elderly person, right? I'm sure it has something, And this was somewhere in May, and I think by October we had packed our bags and we had come back. So I actually thought that, okay, it made sense that, okay, let's give it our best shot, right? I'm not going to do a job on the side, and I'm not going to do any of that, and I'm going to just go like fully into it, and then let's see what happens. So that's something which I felt that, and that has always stuck on to my mind that, it's very hard कि मैं ये भी कर लूँ, मैं वो भी कर लूँ. आप जो करो, do it with your full intention, with your full heart, and results will follow. And if they don't, it's not the end of the world, right? So that's something, that helped us go a long way, even when we were in the business. It's not like, it was like an overnight success, right? There were times when we were near death, many times, but there was something which, it kept us going, I would say, right? So, yeah.
For me, I think what I told you earlier, I think the family friend in Singapore who said, what are you kids doing here? Go to an emerging economy and, do something. And when you made some money, then you can come to Singapore.
That. We got to their house for dinner, and they were like, what do you guys, they were like semi-retired, like they were like consultants back in Singapore. And we were in there like cushy, condominium,
and like totally
aspiring a life like that.
Totally in awe of the condo they used to live in, the cars that you used to drive.
But they were like, we are 60 plus and you're seeing this, but we've like moved around places and it's taken a while, and Singapore's been like our last destination to come and, now whatever, retire or chill. And then when we came home, we realized that,
it made sense, right? Look what has happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah, right.
Just look how things have gone, right? So I think one of the best decisions, one of the best advice, I think I would have got.
Amazing. I think 2 pieces of advice at the perfect time when you guys were at that juncture and studying up. Thank you so much, Megha, Arush. It was a pleasure chatting. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Likewise, yeah. Take care.
Mazin.